Hello everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I'm Adrian Lloyd. This is just my stupid opinion. I actually didn't mean to take such a long time off from the actual episodes themselves, these long form episodes. What ended up happening was when Easter weekend hit, I actually completely forgot that it was Easter weekend, so I ended up getting a little busy and I ended up taking a break without kind of announcing it. That was a stupid thing to do. But I had a lot of family stuff going on that weekend, so I didn't have time to film. And I meant to put out one midweek, and I got bogged down with schoolwork, so I dropped the ball. I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to try and get back to putting out episodes on a more regular basis. But it might not happen until May, just because I'll be out of school, and I should be back on a much more regular schedule in order to do this. So this message is actually mostly for my audio listeners, those who either download my episodes or use those podcasting apps to listen to them. This message is mostly for you because I have put out a couple of shorter form videos, but nothing. I haven't been uploading to SoundCloud or anything over the last couple weeks. So I just want to apologize for that and say that I'm going to try and get back on a regular schedule of releasing these episodes now. Also, I have released 2 parts of my three-part investigation into the Parkland shooting, the March for Our Lives, and the Parkland activists. The third and final part should be ready to go on. The third and final part should be ready to go by about midweek, Wednesday, maybe Thursday. It'll get released. And then once I've released that, I will be sure it will also get released for the audio listeners if they're interested in downloading and listening to it, so they'll have access to it too. Okay, so I just want to start off today by actually I wanted to talk about quickly give a brief update on what's going on with the Canadian mission to Mali. Really, the main thing that I wanted to talk about is the fact that recently we got informed that a mortar attack killed at least 2 peacekeepers in a Mali mission, and this is the same place where Trudeau wants to send 200. It's either 200 or 250 of our Canadian Forces members to. This is the same place that Romeo Dallaire, who, if anyone remembers from my last one talking about the UN. My last episode talked about the UN, I said that he was probably the only person in the Rwanda situation that tried to do the right thing. He even said he would not touch this mission. No, not at all. And we just found out that 2 more were killed. Now, let's not also forget that there have already been some 160 that have been killed over the last 5 years or something in Mali. Peacekeepers, UN peacekeepers. And Trudeau wants to send 200 to 250 of them there. I don't know if they've actually left yet. I haven't seen that yet. I don't believe they have left for the mission yet. The real problem with this is Trudeau is sending our peacekeepers into a dangerous situation, a mission we should never undertake, because this is just going to end up to be another UN disaster failure. You watch, I'm calling it now, it's going to be a disaster. I have a feeling that we're going to lose a few Canadians on this mission. I'm very pessimistic about this mission. But the whole reason that we're even doing this is because Trudeau thinks it's so freaking important for Canada to get its seat back on the Security Council. And I thought the perfect example of how we can see that Trudeau doesn't care about another human being was actually very recently. Because if you remember, we had a situation where Trudeau was giving a speech. It was when we had the new RCMP commissioner, I believe it was. And we had 2 RCMP candidates ended up fainting right by Justin Trudeau. He watched them as they fell, or just after they fell. And he did nothing about it. Let's go take a look at this video right here, where it does. Let's go take a look at this video where it shows this. Hold on. Volume. There we go. Down they go. Yeah. So Trudeau's standing right over there. He's out of scene right now, but he just looked and didn't try to do anything. It would be good for the leader of our country to go to that fallen RCMP, that fallen Mountie. They are one of the main symbols of our country, and he can't be bothered to step up to go over and even make sure that they're okay. So that's the first one. and they're taken out, and then Trudeau's giving his speech, and then there's the second one that goes down. Once again, nothing from our Prime Minister. He does not care about Canadians as long as it... Oh, look at that. Do you see how annoyed he looks? You see how... Let's go back and check that out again. Look how annoyed he looks that he interrupted his speech with a fainting. How dare you? How dare you? He wants to be part of that lucrative organization again, the Security Council, because Canada lost its seat under Prime Minister Harper. I'm not prepared to sacrifice Canadian lives for a seat on the UN Security Council. I am not prepared to sacrifice the lives of these Canadian soldiers, these peacekeepers, quote unquote, and I only use the quote unquote because UN really doesn't do much of peacekeeping. It really fails most of the time in these missions. And the whole point is because Trudeau wants to seal his legacy. That's really the main thing behind this. He wants to seal his legacy. Well, quite honestly, I'm not interested in Trudeau's legacy. I don't want to give Trudeau his legacy if it means that Canadians have to die because of it for a stupid, pointless reason. I would love to find a solution there. My problem is that this is not the solution we're looking for. This is not the... We're not going to go in there and solve everything. We're not going to go in there and we're going to end the violence that's been going on since 2013, I believe. I believe that's the date when the UN peacekeeping mission began. So once again, Trudeau is... He's willing to put others' lives and health and safety at risk for his own gains. So over the last couple weeks, but more specifically over the last few days, I've been reading through some articles of our media as they've been talking about what's been going on with Facebook. As everyone knows that there was a whole incident with Cambridge Analytics as they were handed over a shit ton of information of people all across America, Canada, even the rest of the world. So this has been a big problem, something we want to plug the hole in. But it's been clear to me as I've been reading through certain articles. Well, shouldn't say certain ones. I've just been reading through through our media, different sources, CBC, Global, CTVs, Toronto Star, I've been noticing that the mainstream media doesn't have a strong understanding as to what Facebook is and how serious this problem goes. See, they are barely scratching the surface with this whole situation, and even some are not even blaming Facebook the way they should. This is one article we have here from CBC. I'm not actually getting into this article itself, just wanted to show you this title that was released. Everything you ever posted publicly on Facebook has probably been harvested. So what? It may be public data, but it's a goldmine for marketers, spammers, fraudsters, and cyber criminals alike. So now this article, of course, just goes into it just scratches the surface of it, talking about how it could be a problem for our democracy, blah, 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 blah. But they've also been saying that this is not a Facebook problem, but this is actually a problem that has to do with our democracy, that we are failing. It's not Facebook. See, the first thing that our media needs to understand is that when Facebook first came around, this was exactly the sort of thing that people worried about, and this was exactly the sort of thing that was said publicly by Facebook, Zuckerberg, and even through their community guidelines that we didn't have to worry about. We didn't have to worry about our information getting harvested. They had plenty of safety features in place, so the average user didn't have to worry about all this information getting out, getting handed around, which was obviously something people worried about right off the start because we're putting a lot of our information out there for people to see. Now, 90% of the time, it's just for interaction with people, getting to know people. So most of the time, it's really not meant for malicious purposes, but the other 10% are meant for malicious purposes. So what the mainstream media is not understanding is when they're being more defensive of Facebook, is that they don't understand that this is exactly what Zuckerberg said was not going to happen, and this is exactly what they've been doing right from the start. This is not just a problem with a failure in democracy. This is a failure on Facebook's part of not handling the power that they had responsibly. You know, everyone knows the famous line from Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. Well, Facebook did not handle this with great responsibility. It was Facebook. Everyone's blaming Cambridge Analytica for what happened, but really we should be putting our blame on Facebook, because they were the ones who handed over the information of 50 million users without a care in the world. They did it, no problem. And this wasn't the first time that this sort of situation has happened. This has happened time and time and time again. This has been, Zuckerberg and Facebook have handed over our information to whoever, whether they happen to be politicians, whether they happen to be pollsters, whether they happen to be marketers. They've handed over our information to thousands of different organizations and corporations so that they can target us, whether that happens to be with political messaging, advertisement, whatever it happens to be. So our media is not getting a strong grasp on what the real problem is. I've highlighted a few areas that I see as problems throughout these articles. And we'll start with this one here, where actually it said why we shouldn't blame Facebook for what ails democracy. The trend toward authoritarianism and polarization predated the data scandal. Now, first of all, there's always going to be a problem with authoritarianism. I couldn't get that word out. There's always going to be a problem with that throughout the world. There's always going to be a problem with that in every single country. Even the most free countries always will have some form of authoritarian government. And if they don't have authoritarian government, they have authoritarian political parties that want to come in and take control, centralize the power. So but that's not, the problem is before the rise of Facebook, before the rise of the internet, it was much harder to garner this sort of information on people. But now, with social media, we've put all our own information out there. We've put all of our likes, our dislikes, our political feelings. So we've made it very easy for us to be targeted by groups such as this. And it's a problem not only just from Facebook standard, but this is also a government problem, if you ask me, because who's really probably the ones that are harvesting most of that information? I have no doubt that that's exactly what the governments have been doing. And if it's not even the government specifically, we're talking about intelligence agencies. NSA, FBI, CIA, and even in Canada, CSIS isn't one that is probably harvesting all this information. So we have this problem to begin with, but what these news are, the mainstream media seems to think is a good idea, is to get the government in on these regulations. Say, well, we need the government to step in and regulate Facebook in this way. This is exactly what our government wants. And in this article that it says right here, it says, as it goes on, it says, there's a glimmer of potential good news. Government could can take steps now to impose some order on political activity taking place on social media platforms. We don't want this. We don't want the government stepping in to impose some order on political activity on social media, because right now, there's not much for the right wing in Canada, and there's some in America, there's some representation of conservatism and right-wing news in the mainstream, such as Fox News would be a good one in America, but we don't really have this in Canada. The National Post is supposed to be a conservative paper, but I question that any time of the day. I do believe when they say they're fiscally conservative, because they have, through their articles, proven to me that they're fiscal conservatives. But if we're talking socially conservative, not even in the slightest, if you ask me. In fact, I found a lot more articles that have supported Trudeau from the National Post than I would say that I've actually condemned him. These all seem to be based on the writers at the National Post. There's certain ones that hold those more conservative views, right-wing views, that'll be more critical. But then it seems to me like some of the more younger folks coming into the National Post, these younger journalists, are not holding up the same way these older folks are. They are definitely coming in with much more left-wing biases. So we want the government to step in and regulate what's going on Facebook. Now, not just Facebook, but it would be on many more social media platforms. It would probably be more or less a general regulation of the internet in and of itself. And the main reason that they're pushing for this is they're talking about how it has to do with the safety of our democracy. They're talking about how right now, they're talking about how this could put in danger our election come 2019. However, I'll be honest, I am not very concerned about foreign influence in our next election. I am a little bit, because there has been influence in the past. There was some when it came to third parties and getting financial donations in our previous election, which kicked out a lot of the conservative ridings. So why I say I'm not concerned about foreign influence as much is I'm more concerned about, I guess I would say, liberal influence and liberal party influence in our upcoming election. And I think this is exactly what Justin Trudeau is trying to do. And I'll get more into that in just a minute. But I thought also, Trudeau, when he was asked a question on this, of course he deflects. He never can answer the question properly. He always likes to toot himself on something that he's never actually done. And in this clip you're going to see right here, this is exactly what Trudeau does. It's actually kind of funny. So let's just take a look at this clip right here real quick of what Justin Trudeau says when he's asked about Facebook. Goddamn commercials. I am so sick and tired of these goddamn commercials and ads and shit. I know this is a lot of way that you make money on YouTube and online and videos and stuff, but I'm just sick of them because that's what I hated about TV, and now they're doing it now.
This is a conversation I've had on an ongoing basis since I got elected with Facebook, with leaders in tech platforms. That balance of protecting privacy while ensuring that people are able to live their lives in an increasingly digital way. Obviously, we expect Facebook to take significant measures, as we expect from all platforms, to take significant measures to continue to protect people's privacy, to continue to ensure the protection of our democratic institutions. But that's also something that we're doing as a government. We've tasked our Democratic Institutions Minister over the past years to look into what can be done to safeguard our electoral processes, and that's not just the voting aspect, but it's also communications, advertising, all those things that go around it. We know that there are concerns around foreign interference in elections. We need to make sure that we're protecting the integrity of our institutions. Further to that, I'm very pleased that the Privacy Commissioner is launching a formal investigation into Canadians' privacy and Facebook and online media. This is a new area in our society that we have to be very vigilant about because people's lives can be altered and damaged if the wrong information gets out.
Just a quick follow-up. When it comes to political parties, should they be more transparent about how they collect data and what they do with it and how they protect it? And should it be subject to privacy laws? And if not, why not?
I think that's an important discussion that we've been having in various ways over the past years. As you will know, the Liberal Party has consistently raised the bar on openness and transparency. We now, as some of you may have seen last night, had a fundraiser in which the media is invited to every single one of our fundraisers. There's openness on donation.
Yeah, they were invited to this fundraiser he was talking about, which once again, it was one of those rich-ass motherfucking fundraisers, the like $1,500 a plate fucking fundraisers. They were talking about how you saw next to no young people there because no young people could afford it. And on top of that, the media that he talks about how we invited them in and stuff were pushed to the back. They were all like in a pen, pretty much like fucking farm animals in the back. That's where they were, and they were forbidden to ask questions to a lot of the people there. So it's not like he's been very transparent and he's trying to use this as an excuse with this fundraiser that he's talking about. This guy's full of shit. But let's finish up what he had to say. That whole part about liberals raising the bar on transparency, oh, that was just beautiful.
And we're encouraging other political parties to follow suit, to demonstrate the kind of openness and accountability on fundraising that the Liberal Party has shown. I think it'd be very important as a first step to move towards greater transparency and openness on that. And we're always looking for ways to further improve and instill the confidence that Canadians have in our political process and our political systems and our electoral process.
Oh my god, you can't trust a word that comes out of that guy's mouth. But anyway, as we move on, because they're talking about how the biggest problem has to do with subversion of our democracy from foreign interference. Of course, that's always going to be a concern in any election. However, they're not really taking the steps that they're saying in order to ensure that we're being protected online. We can see here from this article from the Tor Star that says, why is Justin Trudeau bowing down before the U.S. internet giants? Individual Canadians and our corporations are suffering from Ottawa's infatuation with Facebook, Google, Netflix, Haroon Siddiqui writes. First of two parts. Anyway, so as I got these few parts right here that we highlighted. So we'll just quickly cap off. It says, in genuflecting the rapacious American corporation, Justin Trudeau and his two cabinet colleagues entrusted with the file, Heritage Minister Mélanie Joly and Democratic Institution Minister Karina Gold are failing to stand up for Canadians, Canadian companies, and Canadian sovereignty. Now, first things first, and we're going to be talking about Karina Gold real quick. So, Karina Gold she's been talking before about how she wants to regulate fake news, like get a handle on this fake news, and the main thing that they're talking about is online. Twitter, Facebook, the usual places that they accuse people of spreading fake news, although they consider fake news to be conservative news and right-wing news. I would be considered fake news by them. I mean, I don't consider myself news or anything of the sort, but just showing you what they think is fake news. People like me, who are online doing our own independent thing, reporting on government scandals, corruption, we're considered fake news by liberal standards. Even though a lot of times people in positions such as myself, these independents, we don't just come out and make accusations like this, but we'll have, whether it be articles or government documents backing this up, but we're the fake news apparently. So the one thing specifically, and the first thing I want to go off on is actually completely off topic, but one thing that I am a little tired of is I'm really tired of these parliamentarians who have babies and then act like they're some sort of fucking hero. And the reason I bring this up is because Karina Gold was apparently made history recently because she was one of the first MPs to have, I think cabinet ministers to have a baby while in office. Now, what I don't like about the way they present themselves, these parliamentarians, is they act as if they're some sort of goddamn superwomen for having a baby, and it's like, oh, well, now I gotta go back to work. I'm going to take my baby with me, and then usually it makes the news about, oh, these working mothers, how hard it is. Millions of Canadian women have babies all the time and don't get the same opportunities as these parliamentarians. They don't get the salaries that these parliamentarians get. They don't have the opportunities to take their kids to work when they can't find sitters, and many of them have to stay home in order to take care of their child. Now, when you have a baby, that's always going to be affect your workplace, of course. But when these parliamentarians show up with their children, they act like they're some sort of superheroes for doing it when they're really not. Now, I think they think it's unfair because a lot of times they don't get their full maternity leave, so they're like, well, I don't get it, why not? I feel in this situation, it's actually not an argument, because when you're supposedly the leader of our country, you get a lot of benefits, but there's also going to be some things you have to give up. For instance, I'm sure many parliamentarians have their vacations canceled for votes and things like this, or again, they're called back from vacation, so things like that suck. Now, that happens to CEOs and other executives too, but the majority of people don't have to worry about that. However, these people they get more salary, they get paid more than the most of that average Canadian, get paid a lot more than the average Canadian. They have salary, they work less per year, and they're allowed to take their children to work, and they can even afford sitters if they want. Most people can't do this. Most mothers can't do this. So I'm a little tired of parliamentarians thinking that they're doing some great thing by having a child and then a few weeks later going back to work and having to bring their child with them. Because I don't believe that most of these parliamentarians can't find a sitter. I don't believe that for a second. They have the cash to be able to afford this. The average Canadian finds it hard to find sitters for their children. So that's completely off topic, I know that, but I just wanted to kind of go off on that. And what really was I noticed about this article when we were with Karina Gold is the fact that they're trying to mess with the timeline when we're talking about this Facebook issue, and I think this goes back to a larger issue that I'm going to get to at the end. When they're talking about regulating the fake news problem online, blah, 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 she gives her little speech, and then it says, her words echo a warning of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau reportedly delivered to Facebook's chief operating officer last fall. Fix the fake news problem or face more intrusive federal regulations. Now, here's the thing I didn't like about this. This article was published February 22nd, 2018, and this person is saying, the author of the article, Aaron Weary, says that last fall, this is when Justin Trudeau gave this warning to them. You better get a handle on this fake news. No, it wasn't. In fact, it was less than a fucking month before. Because here we go, Trudeau to Facebook. Fix your fake news problem or face stricter regulations. February 8th, 2018. Now, why do I think this is significant and why do I think they're messing with the timeline is for this specific reason. Is that when did Justin Trudeau say he wanted to get a handle on this fake news problem? He said he wanted that fake news was a problem after the India trip. This is when he said that Facebook had to get a handle on it, not beforehand. What happened on that India trip? It was a PR disaster. And one of the biggest problems that they had was not only independent Canadians and people across the world, such as in India, tweeting about it, putting on Facebook, saying that it was like, what the fuck is Justin Trudeau doing? The other problem is the fact that is that many international news articles were starting to reach Canadians, and they were seeing the negative press that we don't get here in Canada. There's not really that much negative press of Justin Trudeau, despite the fact of what he's done. He should be criticized a lot harder than he is. So when we were having articles that were coming out from the BBC, we had articles that were coming out from the India Times and plenty of other publications that were being very harsh on Justin Trudeau and for the way he was acting and the way that his family was behaving. That gave him a very large popularity plunge. Like, it was after that that many Canadians saw that trip as a disaster. And these are also including Liberal voters, supporters of Justin Trudeau. They thought it was a horrible, one of the worst vacations, or international trips, I should say. One of the worst international trips that not only a Canadian Prime Minister is undertaking, but one of the worst has ever been undertaking in modern history, in modern political history. It was a disaster. Then Trudeau comes out and says, you got to get a handle on this fake news. It was because this is where the criticism is coming from. The criticism of Trudeau, the conservative lashback, the right-wing lashback, is coming from here. Online, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. It's not so much that we're being influenced by foreign people as it does that the dissenting voices, the dissenting Canadians' voices, are starting to be heard a lot louder, especially after that India trip. Now Justin Trudeau wants to regulate Facebook. And then the Cambridge Analytical situation happened. That was pretty much just fell in Justin Trudeau's lap. He's looking for a reason to regulate online media, social media. And then the Cambridge Analytical scandal comes out where Facebook hands over the data of 50 million users. What better reason now does Justin Trudeau have to push for this? Well, we need to regulate online media because it's spreading fake news and it's foreign influence. So this is really what I think it is. This is just, they don't understand the Facebook problem. First of all, they don't realize that Facebook is the real perpetrator in this. Well, Cambridge Analytica, of course, they played their part by requesting this data, getting this data, pushing for this data. But Facebook was the one who should be protecting that data, and they willingly handed it over, no problems, no questions asked. They're not being critical of Facebook. And on top of that, they think that Justin Trudeau and our government is pushing for this for actually good reasons when they're not. They're pushing for this because it matches their agenda. It allows them to gain more control over the public opinion. Already online, conservatives and right-wingers have a problem with being censored with what they want to talk about. And that doesn't necessarily have to be so overt. That can be small shadow banning. Sometimes it is more overt. But anyway, kind of getting back to this, as we look at this article from the Toronto Star, was the why is he bowing down for U.S. internet giants? It says, in genuflecting on the rapacious American corporation, Justin Trudeau and his two cabinet colleagues entrusted with the file, Heritage Minister Melanie Joly and Democratic Institution Minister Karina Gould, are failing to stand up for Canadians, Canadian companies, and Canadian sovereignty. Several reasons are proffered for their difference. They don't want to risk antagonizing the Donald Trump administration in the middle of testy NAFTA negotiations. Well, first of all, if we were playing properly, if Canada was negotiating properly in the way that negotiations should be done, not only do I think NAFTA negotiations between Canada and America would be done, but I think they would be pretty solid, that we could come to a pretty mutual agreement for the most part. But that's not what's been going on. It's because Justin Trudeau and his Liberal Party have just been pushing for this progressive agenda in everything they do, and the Americans have no interest in that. Donald Trump doesn't have any interest in a progressive agenda. He doesn't care about gender parity in the workplace. He wants to do what's good for the economy, and this is what Canada needs right now. We need something that's good for our economy. This is not good for our economy. We would not be in this position if this had happened and they wanted to put the regulations on Facebook and other big social media platforms from the US. This probably would not be a big problem if we were actually playing by the rules when it came to negotiating with America. Now, I'm only saying playing by the rules. I don't actually mean that, of course. You know, there's no official rules, if you say. But my point is they're going against what everyone else wants and expecting others to... Let me be clear. The Liberal Party of Canada is going against what the rest of the world wants in their trade agreements, and then they're blaming everybody else for not wanting to trade with Canada. So really, it's right now, it's our own government that is shooting us in the foot. It's not because we can't get good deals with other countries in trade. And even the ones that we do get are not good. Because if we think the TPP was just revived and signed by Canada, and that had some very questionable concerns about intellectual property. I don't want to get too much into that right now, but that's just one of the examples of how a bad deal, we get bad trade deals, and all the good ones, we can't get at all. I mean, we got a very bad trade deal from India, and that was because Trudeau fucked around, and then Modi didn't care. He just, you know, it's like, fine, fuck it, you know, you'll take whatever deal we want. Meanwhile, a few weeks later, the French leader, Macron, goes to India and walks away with a great trade deal for France. I think it was something like a $6 billion deal that would benefit both France and India. So it was just showing that it was Trudeau himself that really has been shooting us in the foot with trades. He tried making a deal with China a while ago. Now, again, I have problems with China and their communist government. But what was funny, again, is he springs it on the Chinese prime minister. And then he's also, and then on top of that, he springs the trade deal on the Chinese prime minister, and then he can't even negotiate with the goddamn communists with a proper trade. They just said, fuck you, Trudeau, we're not trading with you. This article goes on, it says, they are being particularly nice to Facebook since they are lobbying to locate a data center in Canada. Here's the other problem. If Trudeau really has a concern for this sort of, for online media, Facebook, why then would he want a data center in Canada? Sure, possibly jobs, but to me, if he's going to have a data center there, that seems to me like the more like it's going to benefit Trudeau and the Liberal government if they could have access to that data center. In fact, if that's what some of the regulations has, is that they could have access to those servers, then I think every Canadian has a right to be concerned, because that's just, the Liberal government can use that to completely undermine any opposition argument, any opposition attack ad that goes on. They could use that to, well, first of all, they could probably use that in order to figure out what's going on beforehand. You know, if people are tweeting about what's going to go down, like the way we do now, we tweet about certain things and and what's going to happen. A good example is that today was the 8th of Today is the 8th of April, and at 1 p.m. today, there was a mass tweet of hashtag Save Ontario, where everybody just tweeted out, and that was showing support for Doug Ford and the PC party, and then also condemning Kathleen Wynne and what she's done to us. Now, if the government has access to the servers, they know about these things that are going to happen, these planned tactics and things like that. For instance, if we're going to have a massive whatever they call them, mob tweet sessions, where everybody tweets away in order to get attention. They can suppress that, which seemed to be happening with the hashtag, because a lot of people were tweeting it, and people were noticing it wasn't even hitting the trending list, despite the fact that other people were tweeting about things that had significantly less attention, significantly less likes, significantly less retweets, yet those were trending and our hashtag wasn't. So this is just one of the ways. If our government has actual control over that sort of information about what's going to happen, and have control over sort of what can get out and what can't, then those mass tweets become meaningless if they can just shadow ban everybody doing it. And then again, just getting access to all our information that they may not have had before. This is the dangers that I see with what the government wants to do when they are talking about regulating it. They say here, they want Facebook to ensure that the Liberals are not undermined in the 2019 federal election the way Hillary Clinton was in the 2016 election by Russians and others to help elect Trump. Quote, the first Facebook and Twitter president, end quote. First of all, when they talk about this, they're talking about the election by the Russians. Nothing has been conclusive yet. Let's be clear on that. When they say that it was meddled in the 2016 election by the Russians, they're buying into this theory that the Russians meddled without actually having an outcome, without having a proper court case. I mean, Mueller's investigation is still going on, and sure, there's certain things that he's done, like indicted 13 Russians, but then when he has made arrests, when he has made progress, what has it turned into? Nothing. He arrested Paul Manafort and gave him the fucking Al Capone treatment. It was like tax evasion. It had nothing to do with Trump meddling in the election with Russians. And Manafort was one of the ones that I thought, if there was anything, this was going to be the smoking gun. This is where you could find it. But it wasn't. So more or less, it's an ongoing investigation, but our government has come to a conclusion. And they've come to a conclusion that is against the current sitting president of the United States. Is that supposed to help out relations between Trudeau and Trump? Trump doesn't like fucking Trudeau. He wants nothing to do with Trudeau. This is not helping at all by claiming that. And they also say to help, that helped elect Trump, the first Facebook and Twitter president. He had to. He had to be the first Twitter and Facebook president. Like it or not, nobody gave him good press when he was running. Nobody gave him any favorable views. They always came in condemning him no matter what he wanted to do. And in fact, we can go back to, I wish I had the clip ready to go. I don't right now, but there's one from CNN where people are joking, the anchors are joking around about how they've given all this great press to Hillary Clinton. They really could not have done more to help Hillary Clinton in this election. So he had to go to Facebook. He had to be the Twitter president. And many of right-wingers these days, they have to take to social media to get their message out and let their supporters spread the message, because they won't win any other way. It's the same sort of thing with Doug Ford. Doug Ford, his support came from online. As soon as he jumped in the race, it was people like me, people who were engaged on Twitter, Facebook, that were putting out his message. We spread his message across Ontario. Now, he did it himself. We can't sit here and say that we took full credit and we spread Doug Ford's message or anything like that. But do you think that Doug Ford may have gotten the popularity that he would if he did not take to Twitter and Facebook to get his message out? Everybody these days, the politicians are all on Twitter and Facebook. Nobody cares about them. But the Americans cared for someone like Donald Trump. We cared for somebody like Doug Ford. We spread their message. But the Liberals, because they can't get their message out the same way, or they get criticized online, they believe that that means all the ones getting popular support are being influenced by bots, Russians, or foreign influence, which is bullshit. It's complete horseshit. In fact, if we're going to talk about foreign interference tends to help the left-wing parties over the right-wing parties. It's not going to help the Conservatives. It's not going to help Andrew Scheer if we get some foreign intervention in these elections, most likely. You know who is going to support? The Liberal Party, the NDP Party. Because this is exactly when we're talking about meddling in elections. There was a report that was put out. That's a little act. So here we go. This was a report that was put out a while back in the summer controlling foreign influence in Canadian elections. And what this was talking about is how in the 2015 election, in the 2015 Canadian election, they were talking about how third parties were receiving massive funds from progressive groups from outside the country, and they ended up, these third parties were able to compete in ridings. They focused their attention against the Harper's Conservatives, and they ended up, according to their statistics on a website called Lead Now, they said that it was the program, was called, not the program, what did they call it? It was called Vote Together, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. It was called Vote Together. It was like a movement, or anyway, the point is that they wanted people in swing ridings and mostly swing ridings. They wanted them to gain together and vote for the left-wing candidate that was most likely to win in that riding, thereby forcing out the conservative in that riding. And they said, according to Lead Now's website, they said 25 out of the 29 ridings that they put this that they pushed for this Vote Together, which was getting a lot of which was getting money from outside influences, they were effective at getting 25 out of 29% of the time of getting the conservative MP out of office. So Trudeau was trying to act as if this is going to influence it in a negative way, but he would probably, if anything, enjoy the foreign influence, because that would probably benefit him, if anything. It's not going to benefit the Conservatives. But anyway, this was released in June 2017, so this past summer. And we're just going to scroll down the specific part I want to get to. Where is it? I think here it is. Okay, so here we go. So just a few backgrounds. It says, when we're talking about the Election Act, it says, no person who does not reside in Canada shall, during an election period, in any way induce electors to vote or refrain from voting or vote or refrain from voting for a particular candidate, unless the person is a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident within the meanings of subsection 2.1 of the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act. Now, first of all, I think that voting should be restricted to citizens. I actually don't think that permanent residents should have the right to vote, because they could get their citizenship and then take part in Canadian elections. But a reason I prefer that is because Canadian citizenship takes time, dedication. It's not just like a few month process or a year process. It's about a 5-year process. You're putting time into this if you want to be a Canadian citizen. So I don't want permanent residents to be able to vote, to believe it or not. I really don't. If you want to be able to vote in our elections, I think you should have to go on and become a full-fledged citizen. So it goes on, several concerns were discussed with witnesses regarding this provision. In an electoral framework of the 21st century, the CEO recommends that Section 331 be repealed, while the Commissioner recommends that the Parliament may wish to modernize the provision or repeal it. And that is this section right here, the non-interference by foreigners. No person who does not reside in Canada shall, during an election period, in any way induce electors. Pretty much the exact same thing we just read out before. I just wanted to actually show you the actual section itself. So here it is right here. Now, one part I do have a problem with in this is when we're looking at this report is, here we go. Election Canada... There it is. Election Canada receives frequent complaints that media statements such as tweets or interview comments made by non-Canadians violate this provision. What the hell are you going to do about that? What are you going to do about people in other countries tweeting about our election or making comments about our election? And I think this is kind of, honestly, in my opinion, is a crap argument that they're trying to make from this section right here when they say this, because, well, then how many Canadians, if technically, would be guilty of influencing the American election? Because I'm pretty sure their laws are very similar, that there's no foreign influence from a non-citizen, but yet the American election received worldwide coverage for over a year. So people were obviously commenting on it and putting their opinions forth, and people in all countries were very, very open about their opinion about Donald Trump. How the hell are you actually going to charge somebody with this? You really can't. Unless they're going to somehow try and get the country to extradite them just because they put out a tweet or made a comment, you really can't. So this is kind of a BS argument right here. What's this? Yes, here we go. So as we return to this article right here, when they're talking about it, they say, they don't fully grasp the dangers posed by American mega corporations operating mostly above the law across borders, or they do, but have not the fortitude to tax and regulate these companies to ensure competition, safeguard citizens' privacy, stem the flow of hateful and fake content, and stop the steady erosion of democracies. They're also talking about the flow of hateful and fake content. Well, when we're talking about hateful content, you are talking about hate speech, so you won't get me there because now you're talking about regulating speech. And then fake content. Well, then you better start getting a handle on a lot of the media that's out there. I think you have a pretty heavy case against CTV right now. They seem to be one of the biggest conveyors of Canadian fake news, in my opinion. It goes on to say, nothing less would do, given that Facebook, Google, and others are conducting citizen surveillance far more than Soviet KGB or East German Stasi ever did during the communist era. Yeah, I can believe that because they didn't have access to this sort of technology at the time. But the amount, let's analyze this. For instance, let's say the surveillance that was done by the Soviet and KGB. How did they get that surveillance? How did they survey everybody? They had their methods, of course, of people going around. But what they really did is they terrified their citizenry into becoming informants. They said at the height of the Soviet Union, 2 out of every 5 citizens was a government informant. So there was statistically, there was almost a guarantee that somebody in your immediate family was an informant for the government. And they did this through fear. Because if they got you on anything, you risked going to the gulags. And that was one way that you could stay out. You became a government informant. But at the same time, if you didn't deliver enough information to the government, you got thrown back into the gulags anyway. You had to be a good informant. So you ratted anybody out. Let's not compare this to the same sort of surveillance that was going on in the Soviet Union at the time. And you know what? In East Germany, it was a lot of the same sort of thing. This is exactly the sort of surveillance that they were doing too. They were surveilling through fear. Now, the difference is in this, and I do agree that they're conducting citizen surveillance, and it's mass citizen surveillance. But what I don't like about the way they're wording this is the fact that they're trying to suggest as if it's the same fucking thing. It's not. It's not at all. This is not a murderous government that has control over its entire population. This was a group. These are a group of corporations that have let their let their power get out of hand. They didn't have enough responsibility to do the right thing with all the information that they gathered. So I understand if some are thinking that I might be sort of contradicting myself by talking about the problems with Facebook and how much power they have, and at the same time talking about not wanting the government to regulate it. The reason I am saying this has to do with the fact that I don't believe the government is going to regulate it for the better of Canadians. With the type of government that we have in position now, they're just going to use it to their advantage. Trudeau would obviously use this to his advantage. He uses any little piece to his advantage that he can. So he's not trustworthy for this. He's not trustworthy whatsoever. So when they talk about regulating this, the reason that concerns me is because Trudeau was already looking for a reason to regulate fake news on Facebook. Yet he doesn't seem to care too much. I guess that's not the right way to say that. Say he doesn't care. Yet he only seems to care. Yeah, that's a better way to say it. He only seems to care when it negatively affects him. If it's anything positive, no problem. He'll let it slide. So this is really what Trudeau is all about. He is partisan one side, even though he talks about being transparent. He will allow any fake news that supports the Liberals to get through, and he will regulate anything that has to do with dissenting opinion. And he's been systematically doing that since he came into power. So are we really expecting Trudeau to in this situation, gain a conscience, gain a soul, and actually make the right move to just block out foreign interference while letting us Canadians interact and show dissenting opinion? No way. No way. So this is the problem that I have with them wanting to regulate Facebook. And the problem I have with the media is that they're playing this, they're only scratching the surface. They really think this is only about foreign interference, and they think it's a big deal. And they're willing to gladly give the government this power to regulate our last form of free communication. They'll gladly hand it over to them. While at the same time, when we go through some of the more problems, they say that Facebook and Google, blah, 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 they are bleeding mainstream media by stealing news content paid for by someone else and vacuuming up an estimated 75% of digital revenue in Canada that totals about $5 billion a year. The mainstream media is bleeding itself. And this is you can easily see this by going on to YouTube and looking up the views we could look up the views in comparison to the amount of subscribers on many of these channels. The mainstream media is simply bleeding itself. Hold on. Let's take a look through. Let's start with CBC. CBC News. Let's see how many subscribers they have. 600,000 subscribers. That's a damn good number. Now, let's take a look through their views. Let's go, we'll give them a fair amount, because some of it does make, like, here we go. We got 173,000 views, but this also had to do with the Humboldt tragedy that just happened. And for anybody who, and that's just, has to do with the bus crash that happened. That was very unfortunate. So we did see a spike in there. But let's go a little farther down when we're getting into just a regular sort of day for CBC. Here we go, 2 days ago, 496 views. 4.1k views, 5.3k views, 3.1k views. This was a good day. Tim Horton's reputation plummets on annual ranking. 16k view, 19k view. For people who have 600,000 subscribers, this is pretty bad. The only time they gain any sort of viewership is when something big happens. For instance, down here, YouTube shooting, 99k views. This one is the 736k views. What is that? The murdered and missing Indigenous women. Yeah, that's what that is. 736 views. Yeah, and some of these we can see though do have some decent views. Oh yeah, we already pointed these ones out to you. But again, it's only when something big happens that they seem to get these numbers. Now, global news, 169, almost 170,000 subscribers. Almost 170,000. Oh, geez, look at this. This is horrible. Oh, my God. Oh. 145 views 11 hours ago. 57 views 11 hours ago. And then again, they have 54k views, but this is also one of the big stories. This has to do with the bus crash. But look at these, 2.6k views, 6.7k views, 150, 196, 734, 490, 98. They did good on this one. They got 451,000. Good for you guys. You actually got one. You actually got one that broke 100,000. Good for you. But these views are awful. Let's finally go to CTV. We'll end with CTV on this. 80,000. And yes, you'll notice I am subscribed to all these ones because I need the fucking stories. Alrighty, let's see. 908 views. 1.4k views. 931. 3.1, 4.8, 620, 1.5k, 1.7k, 6.5k for 80,000 views. Yeah, that's horrible. Now, I know I go through a lot of the same thing for sure. I mean, here we go. 24 views, 40k views, 74 views. Absolutely, it happens. You will get stuff that just does not get much attention. But for a guy who only has 500 subscribers, in comparison to these guys, some of my views blow them out of the water. And I am a small time YouTuber. This is not... You can't blame Facebook and them for bleeding the mainstream media. The mainstream media has done it to themselves. In fact, the only thing they can blame Facebook, Google, and all these for doing is because these were, while we're starting to get off these platforms for alternative media again, because we're starting to see more problems with them. The real problem is these were the platforms where alternative media and people like me used to we thrived on there. Okay, I'm going to stop saying me because I'm small time and everything. I can't really put myself in with a lot of these big YouTubers. So this is where a lot of these alternative media YouTubers thrived on, and where they made their impact, where we started to see the problems with the mainstream media. So the media has bled themselves simply by their bullshit reporting. And then also says in here, Facebook, YouTube, Reddit, and others have allowed their platform to be hijacked by the likes of Daesh and also Western hate mongers, right-wingers, racists, white supremacists, xenophobes, homophobes, misogynists, anti-Semites, and Islamophobes. Ooh, I think we know exactly where you're coming from. And I love how he says that the Daesh, which is ISIS, just to be clear, the Daesh is ISIS, and that's true, they did. And guess what? People complained about it, and YouTube and Facebook and the likes kept it open. Yes, they did. So I understand, again, people say, well, this would be a reason you need regulation. This should be them regulating themselves. Really, in my opinion, is Facebook, YouTube, Reddit. These people should never have allowed ISIS on in the first place, and that should have been obvious. But then they start to say, Western hate mongers, right-wingers. I hate the West because I'm a right-winger. I hate the West? Are you fucking kidding me? I'm a bigger patriot to this country than any of these goddamn journalists. And they're fucking calling me and you a Western hate monger? Oh, don't even go there, left-wing media. The ones who have primarily shat on the West and our culture from the get-go. Don't even play this game by trying to suggest that right-wingers are Western hate-mongers. Right-wingers are some of the only people that are actually trying to uphold our Western values, that are trying to uphold what the West was created about, while it's the left right now that is tearing all that round. So don't give me this bullshit about that. White supremacist, racist. Well, everybody's a racist and a white supremacist these days. In fact, black people are white supremacists these days. Who knew? Xenophobes, homophobes, misogynists, anti-Semites, and Islamophobes. Once again, xenophobe, homophobe, misogynist, anti-Semite, Islamophobes. These are all just fucking bullshit terms that they throw around these days. So, I just really wanted to show the lack of knowledge from our mainstream media about the Facebook situation and online content and how it works. They don't understand it because they're not involved in it. Hell, I only have a basic understanding of it, and I'm involved in it right now. There's people who still understand this shit way better than me. If you want somebody who can tell you about how the internet works and go ask Mr. Mediker. I honestly suggest anybody in the media go look up YouTube search Mr. Mediker. He's been online in YouTube since the beginning. He's like, what's his nickname? He's like the friggin' the internet librarian or something. I think I've heard people call him before, or the internet archiver. He knows everything about the internet. He knows about the deep reaches of the internet. So if anybody from the mainstream media watching this, if you want to educate yourself on how the internet works, then go. Mr. Mediker probably won't talk to you. He hates your guts, but you know what? Go watch a few videos of him. He could explain this shit a lot better than I could. I hope I did not shill Mr. Mediker too much, goddamn. But my point is that they have no understanding of how this works. They have no understanding of the deeper issues that are coming with the government regulating Facebook. And they're not putting the blame where they should. They're making it sound like Facebook, YouTube, and them aren't really the problem. It's everyone else's the problem and the lack of government oversight. No, the problem is that these platforms betrayed what they stood for. They betrayed their freedom of speech. They betrayed their privacy protections. These platforms, they're the ones to blame. And yeah, I know it might seem like I'm being oxymoronic by saying, fuck these platforms, they're not regulating themselves, and saying, no, I don't want the government regulating it. Once again, it's because of who's in charge right now. I do not trust the ones in charge. I have no reason to trust the people in charge, and neither do you, who have proven themselves to be authoritarian and actually some of the biggest hypocrites on the face of the fucking planet. That's all I have for you guys today. Thank you again for once again joining me on the Just My Stupid Opinion podcast. My name's Adrian Lloyd, and I'll be coming to you again in about a week with some more cringeworthy stories coming out of Canada right now, because there seems to be a lot under our current government. As long as Justin Trudeau stays in office, we're going to be having a lot of these ridiculous news stories coming out. But thank you for joining me again. I'll talk to you guys soon.